What's going on, YouTube? I know it's been a minute. It's the Average Biker here, and today we're going to talk about why Harley keeps closing dealerships. Now I know Adam Sandoval and some of the other YouTubers have put out their shtick on the Harley dealerships closing and everything like that, but here I just want to give you the opinion of the average biker, as well as just a little bit of business analysis that I did in my spare time, just thinking about Harley in general. You know, as a Harley rider myself, I consider the brand, I consider the value of my motorcycle, and it's important to me that the brand remains solid. So any major changes and things like that, I always got my ears to the street. I'm trying to make sure I keep up with what's going on. So today I'm going to give you the 4 main reasons why I think Harley dealerships are closing, starting with the most relevant and the most obvious, and then going down to some of the smaller things that I think might be driving some of the closures. So let's start off with number 1, shall we? Number 1, first and foremost, Harley Davidson itself is making less profit. Starting in 2018, their top line, which is revenue, went from $5.7 billion in 2018 to $5.4 billion in 2019. And then last year in 2020, they closed the year out making $4.1 billion. So a total downward slope there. And we can also look at the bottom line, which is probably the more important figure, right? Which is net income. And this one scares me a lot. So in 2018, Harley made $531 million. In 2019, they made $424 million in net income. And in 2020, they made a whopping $1.3 million. No, not whopping. Safe to say that there's some changes happening in Harley that if you care about the brand, we should all be paying attention to. Another striking thing from their income statement that you can take away is their EBITDA, which is earnings before income, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. They didn't have any EBITDA for the last 3 years, being 2018, 2019, and 2020. That's also not a good sign. So when we really take that into consideration, that Harley's making less money, it's no wonder that they're closing their dealerships. That's obviously what's causing it. If you're not making enough money to keep the lights on, if you're not making enough money to pay your employees, if you're not making enough money to pay yourself, then you have to close the doors and call it a day. You know, and hats off to Tremont Harley Davidson in New Jersey, one of the oldest Harley Davidsons in the country, as well as Nightingales in Ohio. Both of those dealerships were very old, established dealerships that closed within the past year. And that's something that we should take note of. I actually had my bike worked on at Tremont Harley Davidson one time, and those guys there were awesome. It turned out to just be a loose bolt that was making a noise, and it sounded like it was something in my motor. I couldn't figure it out. I was on the road. I didn't have my tools with me. I took it to them. They tightened the bolt, and they didn't charge me a dime. So it's sad to see them go. I appreciated them as a dealership and everything they did. But when you're not making profit, it's time to call it a day, and that's what's happening at a lot of these dealerships. Now, I was reading some comments on Adam Sandoval's video, and people were talking about how there's just too many Harley dealerships too close together. I think that's fair. You know, if there's 3 giant fish in a pond, they're going to duke it out. Somebody's going to take the top spot there. And so that happens in a lot of these cities. You know, here in Charlotte, we only have 2 Harley dealers. But I don't even know if Charlotte's a big enough market for motorcycle riders to have those 2. It may end up only being 1 Harley Davidson dealer here after everything's said and done. Let's go ahead and move on to number 2. Another reason why Harley dealers are closing is because the company itself is restructuring. CEO Jochen Zeitz, I think that's how you say his name, Jochen Zeitz. That he was hired in May 2020. And we're shooting this video in April 2021. So he's had just under a year. So the changes that Zeitz implemented are probably just now starting to take grasp and take hold and make changes to the brand. And maybe some of these dealerships weren't prepared for the changes that he made. Maybe it's just a result of some of his decision making that's happened. I know something that he was big on was having fewer models of bikes as well as simpler factories. And anybody from the supply chain management background will tell you that the more streamlined and simple that your factories are, the easier it is and the more efficient you can work, the more profit that you can make. It seems to me that there's a good chance that that's what's going on. And if you really dive in even further and look at their balance sheet, their total invested capital went up by over $1 billion, as well as their total capital in general, which just shows restructuring. They may have paid down some debt. They're just moving some things around, kind of trying to change it up a little bit. This could be due to a number of different reasons. It could even come down to them getting more efficient machinery or, like I said, paying off debt. But that $1 billion increase in total capital, that's a good thing. The more capital that a business has, the more they're able to make decisions and make moves and make changes with the market and survive or do what they need to do to become more profitable. So that's definitely a good sign. Unlike the last one where net income totally fell off of a hill from $424 million down to $1.3 million, I think the balance sheet seems a little bit more promising. I think that some of the reason for the decrease in net income was most likely due to spending more on processes to improve the efficiency of the company. It seems likely based on everything that I'm looking at. So now we're going to move on to the third item that may be causing Harley dealerships to close. And this one might be obvious to some and maybe not so obvious to others. Competition. So Indian sales have grown 7% from 2019 to 2020. And that's just Indian. There's also Honda, Suzuki, Kawasaki, who are all making motorcycles and touring motorcycles to compete in the space. And for every rider that changes brands, that's more money lost, and that's another customer not walking into those Harley locations to keep it afloat. So it's more than just somebody choosing to buy a foreign bike. It's them trading in their Harley to a dealership at a foreign bike dealership, at a motorsports or whatever local place that they have, and no longer coming into the dealer, no longer buying merchandise, no longer getting their bike service there. So that competition, you can't only just look at the change in sales, the decrease in sales from Harley and the increase in sales from other brands. You also have to look at the fact that some of those old loyal Harley riders may have had enough and they've decided that they want to go to a different brand for whatever reason, and they're losing a lot of income there, and that kind of all just brings us back up to the number one again. Sorry to circle back, but you know, they're just making less profit, which is really the number one reason why any business would close. So reason number 4 is going to be bad customer service, as well as the ridiculous cost of maintenance and merchandise. That really equals less foot traffic. With how expensive it is to get your Harley serviced at the dealership, a lot of people are choosing independent dealerships. They're choosing to do it themselves. I mean, I do most of my maintenance myself unless it's something too serious, like internals or something like that, and I would definitely get some help. But I think that, you know, a lot of people, based on bad experiences at the Harley Davidson dealerships themselves, are choosing not to come back in. And I mean, there's been a few Harley dealerships I've gone to where I totally loved the experience. I felt welcomed. I felt like everybody was there trying to help me with anything I needed, and it was great. I could tell that they appreciated the brand loyalty and the fact that I rode my Harley. But then I've been to some where people really just came out and ignored me. You know, I really had to catch somebody's attention just to get anything done. You know, they would rather just sit there and fool around with their coworkers or do whatever rather than give attention to the customer who's obviously coming in there to spend some type of money. I mean, that's not always the case. Of course, some people come and hang out at the Harley dealers, but I think that as an employee working somewhere where there's a chance for you to profit, especially in sales, if somebody's walking through that door, that's an opportunity. And if your employees aren't seizing that opportunity, well, what do you know? We're going right back up to number one again with making less profit. So a lot of these all tie into the first one, but I think that they all deserve their individual recognition because, if they were going to fix these things, then number one would get fixed as well. But I think you can't fix number one without fixing number 4, number 3, and number 2. And it seems like number 2, the restructuring, they're really doing the best they can there. So, I think that, just kind of a change in attitude, a more positive outlook for Harley in general could totally boost their sales. It could get more people coming back in. I know a few people personally who have sworn that they would never buy a Harley because of the way they were treated at a Harley dealership before. And they had never bought one before, and they went there with somebody who rode one. So those type of things, that's really burning bridges with potential new customers. All right, well, that's going to do it, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you could, please like and subscribe and comment down here. This is The Average Biker. Peace!